What's going on, guys? It's Char here, back with another episode of Charred Takes. Now, I don't know if this is going to be weekly series or anything like that, but I do have another discussion topic for us today. So go ahead, lay back, put me on a side monitor or on like a podcast type deal, and let's get this episode started. So I want to do a couple disclaimers before we get into the topic proper. Again, I want to reiterate things at the beginning of all of these episodes that the opinions I express here are completely my own, but I also encourage you to share your own opinions in the comment section down below. I want to know what you guys think on this topic because I think there's no right or wrong answer here, and you shouldn't just completely hear my opinion, absorb it, and make it your own. You should really think about what I'm saying, the reasons I came to my opinion, form one of your own, and then I think it'll be a more constructive dialogue. As always, it's the Charred Takes here, so let me know if my take was cooking or if it was charred. It's too much of a hot take and you don't really agree, and let me know why in the comment section down below. So I want to get into what sparked this discussion today, and then I realized that last video I put the thesis statement at the end of the video instead of at the beginning for people to kind of like agree, disagree, and discuss like chart or not. And I know all of my high school English teachers would be so disappointed. The thesis is at the beginning and you reiterate it at the end, so we're gonna fix that today. So the thesis for today's video is Marvel Champions is changing, but Marvel Champions is always changing. It's going to make a lot more sense when we get into the discussion proper here in a second, but that's my thesis statement. Let me know if I'm charred on that one, if I'm cooking, or somewhere in between. So kind of a reason why I wanted to do this video, I'm just going to speak bluntly here. Again, don't send hate or vitriol towards these people. I think a lot of these comments came from a loud vocal minority rather than something being the majority of the community, at least from my impression of it at large. So Fantasy Flight Games recently published their 5-year in review article for Marvel Champions. And in that article, if you haven't read it, go ahead, it'll probably be in the description down below. Go ahead, check it out. I don't want to spoil it, but we have a very beloved designer moving on from the game. Caleb, he is moving on from the game. It was announced in the article. He's still staying at Fantasy Flight Games, but he's moving on to, I wouldn't say greener pastures, but like a different project, right? And he's just not going to be a part of the team. But he's being replaced by 2 designers, which for me was personally really exciting. I'm like, wow, they're going from 1 to 2. They're putting a lot of work, they're putting effort, and they're really, they care about the IP, they care about the game, and that's really exciting. You have like double the people who can like create content and things like that. But I guess my opinion that I held, and one that I saw that was pretty common, there was also another opinion which I think was a bit more sinister, and basically, I just saw some nasty comments, whether it was like on YouTube, whether it was on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. Like there was a couple of nasty comments here and there about, oh, the game is over. It's like, the game is sunsetting. And then the one I thought was the worst of all was like, it's time. Like I'm done with this game because essentially the designer, Caleb, leaving the team. And I think that's like extremely reductive. I think it's extremely unfair. And also, I just don't think it leads to anything, leaving those comments when we're discussing this topic. I don't think it leads to anything productive. I just really was taken aback by those comments because it wasn't something I was like used to seeing in the community. So we'll get into like kind of the points I have proper here on why I guess also taken aback and what I think about it. Okay, so time to get to my first point proper here, which is my experience with Marvel Champions. Now, I want to kind of like elaborate on this. It's like my experience in the community, history of the game, and things like that. So I am a part of the Marvel Champions community proper here. Thank you guys all so much for the support recently. It's just been really great. I'm glad we're building a community here, people who can talk, discuss, and enjoy the things I've got going on. It really means a lot. But I'm new to the community. I'm a part of the community, but I'm new. And I don't have the same history that I think most of the other creators and players in this space have. So I still sort of have like an outsider perspective. I wouldn't really say I'm a complete outsider at all. I feel very welcome and I think I'm a part of the community proper. But it's just like I don't have that same history of the game. So for that perspective, like from that viewpoint, I have an outsider perspective because I wasn't around of the past 4 years of releases because I got in earlier this year. So all of my, perspective looking back at that time is just from an outsider looking in type of deal. And because I don't have that history, I don't really, kind of share the same sentiment like, I don't have that same attachment to like, X, Y, and Z designer made this really, famous design that everyone loved, and like it was such a good time in the community, and all those feelings and good stuff associated with that. But that being said, what I do have is, as someone who has recently picked up basically the entirety of the game, besides Age of Apocalypse that I haven't gotten around to, everything that I've played in the game has felt like Marvel Champions. I don't know how to say this in this way. I've never picked up a product and been like, whoa, this hero, this is like not Marvel Champions. This is not something this game I thought would ever go, never in this design space. Everything I felt kind of felt like a natural evolution, which sort of ties back to the thesis that Marvel Champions is always changing. There's been no design that has gone so far out of left field. I'm like, this belongs in like, I don't know, like a TCG. This belongs in Yu-Gi-Oh! This belongs in Arkham Horror or something. I've never really had that impression, even in the slightest. And I think it's because I don't have those experiences with the releases at the time. Like maybe something like a Venom comes out in like the Galaxy Most Wanted wave, and everyone's like, whoa, this is such a strong hero. Or Doctor Strange, like, wow, this completely shifts the power balance on his head. When I've been playing through the game and like, getting experience with all the heroes, the villains, and their nuances, nothing has stood out to me as being relatively like out of left field or an outlier. And I think that it really ties into because people have a history and these experiences tied with their history. There's a lot of like common sentiment and comments, or people will use it to insult releases they don't like. An example of what I'm talking about, they'll be like, oh, it's an X design, or oh, it's a Y design. It obviously isn't as good as X is, or it sucks, or it isn't up to par. And I think comments like that, and those were a lot of comments I saw, maybe from a vocal minority. Again, I'll preface that a bit. There was a few comments I saw with the 5-year article release that were like that. And I think those comments are extremely reductive and unproductive, and I don't think there's a place for them at all. I'll preface that I think it's fine to hold these opinions to yourself, but when you go out into a public forum and you're sharing this, when they're celebrating the game's anniversary, it's just a bad look. Like, there's really no other way to say it. And so I've never been able to, point out like, oh, it's an X design, Y design, but I've also never really looked for it. So I don't want to dismiss that either. So I'm not dismissing the idea that if you did separate every single hero or villain that was designed by a certain designer, you can probably point out patterns if you scrutinize it hard enough. Like, oh, this X designer likes leaning into this, or this Y designer likes leaning into this. And I think that's fine, and it's cool to point out from like, oh, I kind of like their designs a bit more than the other designs. That's like a constructive way to put a comment, rather than like, oh, the game is over. Oh, X design is going to be the front of the game now. That's it. I'm out of here. It's just like a really reductive and unprofessional type of comment to leave on a post that's supposed to be happy and celebrating kind of the game we all play and enjoy. But like, yeah, the sweeping statements on like quality X designer, Y designer, Z designer, they just don't help at all. And they're shorthands for people, when you spread these ideas, like-minded people who maybe had like sort of a bad experience with a villain one time, or maybe it just didn't really click with them immediately. It's like, oh yeah, all of their designs are terrible, and since they're doing this design, of course it's obviously going to be terrible. It just does not work like that, and I think we shouldn't, allow kind of like sentiment like that in that community. And not that I got into arguments over with some people, but I definitely exchanged a few messages being like, hey, this is just, I especially a few messages in support of the designs that were being criticized, because I was like, this is just not right. There's a ton of good that have come out of X, Y, or Z product, and I've been a big fan of it. As someone new to the game and who's played the game, everything feels like Marvel to me. And maybe once I have that subjective experience going into the future, I'll be like, something will mesh with me well. But I'm not going to go onto an online forum and share like vitriol in a way that's just unproductive in general. So my number 2 point is that Marvel Champions has always changed. And that's the one thing that confused me about this kind of backlash from the vocal minority. As someone who started this year, when I went from the core box and you compare like a Claw who starts off with a lot of side schemes to like a Hela, which is like minions and side schemes, but like in a different way. It's kind of like an adventure and whatnot. Yeah, that's cool. It's obviously different. If all the designs stayed in the same design space as the core box, one, I think we would have not like a worse game, but it would be less innovative. They would have done less new things. And I think learning as they went is one of the best things about this game in the design spaces they can go. And there's still so much more design space to untap. Another example I have is like a Rhino, and like Juggernaut kind of feels like an evolution of that sort of design to me. They're just like these really big brutes. They don't scheme for very much, but they do attack you for a lot, and you have to be very careful, and you have to deal with these threats. I think that's just really cool, the design space the game is currently in, to kind of like retool these old designs in a new and I think fresh way. So a part of this is that people give their own subjective experiences that form what they think Marvel Champions is. And I was speaking about this a little earlier. Their own subjective experience in their head forms what they think the game is, and they create feelings based on what they believe the game to be. This is a common sentiment in a lot in like TCGs. Like I played Yu-Gi-Oh in the past, I played the One Piece TCG in the past, is that you think the game plays and should go a certain way, and that cards shouldn't extend past the design space. So when something comes out that doesn't align with kind of your viewpoint of what the game should be, it's met with resistance initially, and you have to choose to either accept or reject it. Now, for a lot of these vocal minority, like vitriolic comments, I think they saw things that they didn't mesh with initially. They had the initial rejection, but they just continued to reject it. They never really tried to find kind of that. And this could be an assumption on my part, but it's just like, I feel like the idea of Marvel Champions should be a bit more nebulous and open than the experience you have. And again, I haven't been around with the game long enough to really form this own subjective, okay, this is Marvel Champions, and let's say down the line they release a wild, I don't know, Mr. Fantastic character. I'm like, whoa, this mechanics he does, this is not Marvel Champions, right? And I'm sure at one point I'll think that to myself, but it's also, you have to realize, like, Marvel Champions is and has always been a constantly evolving game. And if this is like your breaking point, like, you know, Caleb's leaving the team, that's it. There's never going to be a single other design again. I wish you well, and I hope that you can have fun with everything that's been released up until that point. Truly, I mean that, not like in a sarcastic way. But I think if these people who left these comments are open to kind of like a change of heart of being like, it's a team. It was always a team that made all of these designs together and did the play testing and the feedback. That Marvel Champions, as you know it, isn't going anywhere. Yeah, it's changing. Yeah, it's evolving, but it's still going to be that same great thematic and challenging game at its core, or as challenging as you want to make it, because we had the difficulty discussion last week. It's always going to be that same great experience, no matter who's the design behind it. As long as they have that good, you know, foot in the door, you know, they have that good basis to build off of from the past 5 years of work, I have no doubt they're going to keep doing that. Now, in the future, am I going to give some comments on maybe a hero I think is a bit underpowered, a bit overpowered, a scenario I don't like? Sure, but that's fine. Like, it's fine to not personally jive with specific designs, but I just think these sweeping generalizations about designers, about products someone has made, is just completely unhelpful. And it's not like it's constructive criticism. It's not like they say, oh, well, I wasn't a fan of this X, Y, or Z. It's just like, no, their designs are terrible. And I just don't think that's fair. So now I want to move on to my third point, which is talking about passing the torch to these new designers. Apologies, I don't remember them off of the top of my head. That being said, let's just get it started. So from my understanding, as someone who doesn't have the history with the game, this isn't the first time a designer has left or, you know, changed. Like, you know, there's been like kind of a old guard to a new guard type of thing, passing of the torch. And maybe because I wasn't around then, but I would assume there was probably similar vocal minority comments being like, oh, this person made so many designs I loved, and now they're gone. That's it. I'm done with the game. And again, if those people actually did leave the game, you know, I'm happy they had their time with it. And I think it's good to be more open to the change that the game brings. But if it's not what you're looking for, it's not what you're looking for. Like I was talking about in the previous section, I think people are really attached to the memories and experiences that they had with the old designs and the designers who made them especially. So when you have the old guard that disappears, apprehension and, you know, should be common. Like, I don't think it's wrong. I think it's completely understandable that people are apprehensive about the future. But I would like to also reiterate, this isn't the first time it's happened. And I think, like I've been saying in the previous section and throughout the whole video, the game is going to be fine. The game has always changed, and it will always continue to change. It's nothing new. Just because like a designer is leaving, two more are coming on, that has also happened in the past. I don't think it was 2 designers who came on, but designers have changed, and the game is still great. We have so many so much good content. Like, I mean, there's just so much to count. I was gonna start literally just naming the expansion boxes, because even in the most unpopular expansion box, being Galaxy Most Wanted, there's still a ton of good stuff in it. I love the heroes. I love a lot of the mod sets. I love a couple of the villains. There's just great stuff to be found everywhere. And like I said, this apprehension for the future, this, being scared of change, is no excuse for a lot of the comments I was seeing from this loud vocal minority. So let's go ahead and go for how do we move forward to this, and let's reiterate my thesis one more time. So like I said, Marvel Champions is changing, especially with the change of designers and 5 years in, but it shouldn't be a worry because Marvel Champions is always changing. To look at designs when you release now to designs from the core box, no matter who was behind the design, or like whose name was on the box or whose name was on the expansion or the hero pack, the whole team as a whole learned from that experience, and in my opinion improved a ton. Of course, there's some there's some banger knocked out of the park core box and like early hero designs. I'm not saying that they're better in terms of like they know what they wanted the game to be rather than them kind of playing it by ear at the beginning. If you haven't seen the podcast episode from The Winning Hand that had Caleb on when he was doing an interview, they said they didn't have a lot of time for the first wave to really test out what they wanted the game to be. They didn't have a lot of play testing for that wave one. And I think in some of the designs you can kind of see it. Now, do I love those designs and I think they're still good up until this day? Yes, but I think I would be lying to say like something like a Hulk type design or a Thor type design, if it was designed nowadays, would be a lot more versatile in terms of not being shoehorned into like the minions, or Hulk, I think would be a little bit stronger. I still love both of those heroes, not to, spread more hate or vitriol. This is just where I'm coming from when I say, when they had all these 5 years of experience, them as a team, they learned what the game is, the vision of the game they want to push forward, and that's going to help them moving forward into the next 5, 10, 15 years of the game that we have coming up here. Getting 2 new designers is really exciting for me personally, and although, like I said, I'll reiterate, you're warranted to your own feelings about the changing of the old guard to the new. I think it's completely normal and common to be apprehensive about the future, but I don't think it should be expressed in a way that's negative towards the people who still are working hard on the game, who are still working hard to make new content, fresh, innovative, and fun content, most of all, and that are continuing to work on this great and awesome product. I think that's basically all I have for today. I just wanted to get some thoughts off my chest for some of these comments I've found relating that 5-year article, and it's kind of been echoed. I think a couple of other YouTubers have covered seeing similar comments as well. So just so you think I'm not just making these comments out of thin air, and they're not from my head, trust me. I'd seen them across different social media platforms, and I just want to discuss on them a little bit today. So what do you guys think down below? Go ahead and leave your thoughts about this topic, and let me know if I was off the deep end. Was it a Charred Take? You're like, no, certain designers make bad designs, that's a be-all and all. If you come at me with that opinion, I'll engage with you on it, but I really want to see kind of other perspectives on this, or if you agree with me on this perspective. Thank you so much for watching, as always. I'm really appreciative of the support recently. It's been really cool. I love the community we've been able to build here, and I'm excited to see where it goes in the future. Take care of yourselves. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.